The Seeker's Path. From hitchhiking in Hawaii to exploring some of the world's greatest mountain ranges. Join Selamon on a journey of self-discovery as he shares some of his greatest adventures. Follow along as he narrates true stories that are filled with mystery and excitement. Learn how you can find your own truth and gain insights and wisdom from his unique perspective. This is The Seeker's Path, where adventure awaits.
Previously on The Seeker's Path. In the last episode, it was late winter when I experienced my first and only panic attack, and I had so much energy building up within me that I had to go outside and move around. So I eventually built an igloo with some help. Once the igloo was built and then destroyed, that was when I knew it was time for me to go on a quest to find meaning in life. A few months later, one of the world's biggest recorded earthquakes struck. Episode 2, A Major Earthquake. All right, it's closing time. Lock the doors, please, Drea said to me. It was 11 p.m. on Friday, March 11th, 2011, and it was closing time at the pizza joint that I worked at in Cumberland. The snow had all melted and the trees were beginning to bud. The air was getting warmer, and the streets of Bridgman were becoming busier each day. Now see, Bridgman was a beach town in Michigan, so the warmer that it was, the busier that it was. I grabbed the keys hanging from a pin in the wall and locked the front doors of the pizza shop. "Hey, have a good night," said one of the delivery drivers as he headed out. "You too," I replied with a smile. You know, closing time, it was the best part of the day. So, needless to say, I was feeling pretty good. I looked around and made sure that everything was all set up for the next day and that I completed all my closing duties. And I did. "Well, I'm all finished with everything," I told Drea. "Great, thanks. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow," she responded. So I walked out the back door and into the chilly spring air, where I could hear crickets singing their night songs. My bike was chained up next to the door, so I unlocked it and began riding home. The streets were quiet because most people were inside at home, and there were no cars driving out at that time. My bike ride only took a few minutes because I only lived a few blocks away from the pizza place. And once I got home, I locked up the bike by the back door. I went inside and went upstairs to where Drew and I's room was, and I got on my computer. Drew was playing a game on his Xbox. "Enemies to our left," he shouted as I logged in and opened up the web browser. When I got onto my social medias, I noticed that people were freaking out about some earthquake that had hit close to Japan. And there were a lot of links to YouTube videos about the earthquake, so I clicked on one to see what was going on. And what I saw was devastating.
This morning on World News Now, breaking news. A violent earthquake off Japan's northeast coast has rocked the nation.
Tonight, running for their lives. A record earthquake in Japan triggers a mammoth tsunami that washes away everything in its path.
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. The nation of Japan has suffered a colossal, historic earthquake that has caused massive damage, massive loss of life, and sent ocean waters racing over land.
This earthquake was first thought to be an 8.9 magnitude earthquake, but later was deemed a 9.0 to 9.1 magnitude earthquake. It was stated that this was one of the most powerful earthquakes in Japan's history, and the fourth largest earthquake in the world since recording began. It was such a powerful earthquake that it shifted the axis of Earth close to 20 centimeters, and the main island of Japan, Honshu, shifted 8 feet. There was an incredible amount of damage caused by this earthquake. It created a huge tsunami that wreaked havoc on Japan. Waves reached over 130 feet. Boats were carried onto land. Houses were destroyed and over 15,000 people died. And because of the internet, the world knew about this disastrous event almost immediately. I found myself watching video after video of houses being wrecked, buildings crumbling, and water overtaking everything. I was in what you might call a rabbit hole, a YouTube hole, just watching video after video for hours. Somehow these videos led me to checking out videos about HAARP. Now I'd like to take a pause from the story for just a brief moment. Before I go further, I want to say that this show is not meant to be a show about conspiracy theories. I may bring them up because they are important to the story that will help you to understand where I was at that particular time. I'm not saying any of them are true or false. So again, believe what you will about these conspiracy theories. I'm just including them to give you an idea of what I was going through. All right? Great. Let's get back to the story. So, if you're unfamiliar with the term HAARP, it stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It's a program that was funded by the United States Air Force, the Navy, and a few other organizations. I watched one video that was from a show that the History Channel did on HAARP, in which they talked about how this thing was being used to change the weather.
HAARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
And now thinking about it, I remember how I got from the earthquake to HAARP. Some people were suggesting that HAARP may have been responsible for, well, to be honest, I don't really want to get into any of those conspiracies. I'm here to talk about my adventures from my perspective, so let's continue on. So after checking out those HAARP videos for a while, I got sucked into another conspiracy theory. After conspiracy theory. This hole was just getting deeper and deeper. I eventually got to bed after becoming conscious of what time it really was. I could hear the birds beginning to chirp, and the sun was beginning to make its first appearance of the day as thin rays beamed into the window. I looked over and noticed that Drew was no longer on the couch playing his game. I had no idea that he actually went to bed. Had I really been that unaware of my surroundings outside of those videos? Well, I guess so. So I brushed my teeth, had a small glass of water, and went to bed. The next few weeks, I became obsessed with all kinds of conspiracy theories. After my panic attack, my mind became so open to ideas and theories, and I was taking them all in. The Anunnaki, Planet X, Nibiru. Shit, yes. All of this was so interesting to me. My whole view, my idea about what life was and is, was beginning to change dramatically through this period of my life. Of course, the global elite must be reptilians. That reptilian thing, what rabbit hole that is. Well, That led me to David Icke, a former sports broadcaster turned conspiracy theorist, author, and public speaker. He talks about a number of things beyond reptilians, including spirituality and metaphysics. And you'll learn more about him in another episode. I eventually became fascinated with symbols, particularly with the ones known as the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus. These are symbols that most would be familiar with if they saw it. It's an Egyptian eye with a line coming out the far side, a curved line on top, and then another curved line and a straight line at the bottom. Very Egyptian. The Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra were both used frequently in ancient Egypt, and most notably in the drawings and jewelry. They're known as both destruction and healing. So if you think back to when I built the igloo, there was destruction there, there was healing there. And the more I noticed these symbols, either while doing research on the internet or out and about, the more intrigued I became with them. I started drawing them and painting them. One night I was working at the retirement home, changing these bulletin boards that I would create each month. And I had a huge piece of paper that we normally would throw away, but that night I decided to take it home. The next day I went out and bought some cheap paint and went at it. I didn't mean to make it at the time, but it turned out to be an abstract eye that resembled the Eye of Horus. As this was happening in the beginning of May 2011, I stumbled upon the very fascinating subject of UFOs. I was very seriously interested in this topic. This is one of the deeper rabbit holes that I jumped into through this part of my life. One night, Drea, myself, and Drew were hanging out outside in the backyard, and this was May 5th, 2011. And as we were talking, I noticed something unusual in the sky. "Hey, do you two see those lights over there?" I asked them, pointing towards two lights in the sky. "Huh," was Drew's reply with wide open eyes. Drea was checking them out, but she wasn't sure what to say at first. I hurriedly ran upstairs, grabbed my camera, and quickly ran back outside and began to film the lights. There were two of them that eventually began to separate and split off in different directions. Eventually they disappeared, but then we began seeing more lights. This went on for hours, just seeing more and more lights. Each light was going in a different direction. Some flew over us. Though we couldn't really hear anything, we could only see a bright light above us. We sat out there for hours until the sky was dark. I uploaded 2 videos onto YouTube that night before going to bed. A few days later, one of the videos had gotten over 13,000 views. At that point, I got an email that read, "Hi, this is Jack from ABC 57 News. I'd like to come interview you about your UFO videos." Well, I was skeptical at first, so I reached out to an official person from ABC 57 News and asked them if Jack was real. They told me that, yes, Jack is real. So I opened up that initial message and replied to him and told him that I would like to do that. Well, we decided on a time, and as I was waiting outside for him to come up, a white car with an ABC 57 sticker on the side of it pulled up to the house. A young man, early 30s or late 20s, walked out wearing a white button-up shirt and khaki pants. "Hi, I'm Jack. Nice to meet you, he said with a firm handshake. So, I'd like to interview you out here if that's all right. Do you have a chair that you could bring out here? I do, I replied and went in to get a chair. He had me sit down on the chair out around the spot that we saw the UFOs. And he went into the trunk of his car and grabbed a decent-sized camera along with a tripod. He set them up in front of the chair that I was sitting in, and he asked me if I was ready. Yes. So, explain what you saw from this vantage point and try to use directions like north, south, and stuff like that. Whew. All right, I said, and tried to collect myself as well as I could while a big camera was pointed right in my face. These two were really close together, and they're both coming west, in the west direction, and then just all of a sudden one split off north, and then the other one was coming west.
I think I'm...
I was a little nervous, not sure if I was saying the correct directions. But he asked me a few more questions, and he took the camera off the tripod, and we walked around a bit, and he noticed that there was a poster in the garage with a UFO on it, and on the bottom of it said, "I believe." Now, this wasn't my poster, but it is pretty synchronistic that it was there for this interview with Jack. And that man Jack took full advantage of it when he created the news. Initially, he started off with,
Christopher Clausen is what you'd call a believer.
the government is keeping quiet to save everyone from panic.
So it didn't surprise him when he spotted something strange flying in the air from his backyard in Bridgman around 9:30 last Saturday night.
And then they were hardly moving at all, and then all of a sudden it just came right up over on top of us.
Clausen grabbed his digital camera and captured this video.
They looked just like stars that were moving. They're orbs glowing.
The quality wasn't great, but he said it looked a lot like a video posted on YouTube earlier this year from a sighting in Jerusalem.
These two were really close together, and they're both coming west, in the west direction, and then just all of a sudden one split off north, and then the other one was coming west.
I think I'm skeptical.
ABC 57 showed the video to Robert Kingman, a physics and astronomy professor from Andrews University.
I can't just tell you by looking at those, what they might be.
He says they're definitely not stars in the sky, but it could be an aircraft.
It could very well be some flying object that had a lighting system that would flash like that, although it is unusual.
What Clausen saw isn't the only sighting recently. On a website called the UFO Clearinghouse last night, someone posted from South Bend. They reported seeing something very similar to what Clausen captured on video. Kingman says anything is possible.
A small set of observations by trained observers, pilots and things like that haven't been explained.
Clausen says he doesn't know why something would visit Southwest Michigan.
Maybe they have a base under Lake Michigan, or I don't know. Maybe they're just traveling that direction, and I just happen to be in their path.
He says he knows it's something you don't see every day.
At this point in my life, it was becoming quite magical, kind of like the experience with the news station. But it was just the tip of the iceberg. One day near the end of May, I walked into the bathroom like any other day. As I washed my hands, I looked into my own eyes in the mirror and experienced one of the most incredible things ever. So tune in next time to learn what happens. My nugget of wisdom for today. While having an open mind is great, you should always learn how to balance that with being a little skeptical. Because not every conspiracy theory that you hear is going to be true. And many of us can get trapped in a drama that may have started out as just looking into a conspiracy theory. So don't lose yourself. Stay grounded. And it's okay to have an open mind. But also use discernment. Thanks for tuning in here to the Seeker's Path. And until next time, this is Selaman signing out.